Hey, welcome to the Little Better Podcast. My name is Daniel, and I'll be your host. This week on the podcast, we talk all about your gifts, how you're empowered like a Marvel character. Just kidding. We're talking about spiritual gifts and jumping into serving wherever God has placed you here at Northridge Church. We're so excited to learn about your gifts and how you can put them to use when you locate a passion, do it in the context of community, and we'll find out more all about serving today on A Little Better. Remember, our goal on this podcast is to know Jesus better and by the power of his Spirit, do better so together we can be a little better. Hey, welcome to the Little Better Podcast. This is week 6 on Habits for Change in our series A Little More On, and today we're talking all about serving. Before we do, we were trying to get into it a little bit before we started filming, but I wanted to save it. A little bit of banter about the Super Bowl. Oh. All right, so just a hot take. I'm watching our clock so we don't go too far, but yeah, what'd you think?
So I grew up with Super Bowl. There was so many blowout Super Bowls growing up. And I would say like the last 20 years have had a lot of great Super Bowls. So it was entertaining. I didn't care about either team, but it was a great game, you know, tense right down to the end. I was rooting for Joe Burrow, I guess, but I don't know.
Why? Why Joe Burrow?
I don't know.
That's a good answer.
Just because Cincinnati, second year in the league, Cincinnati had a losing record last year. It was a nice story.
I heard someone say, and I thought this was a good point, as Bills fans, you should cheer against Joe Burrow because
we might be facing him quite a bit.
Well, not just that, but then like Josh Allen just goes lower in the totem pole of quarterbacks in the AFC because you're always going to have Patrick Mahomes there, and then if Burrow wins a Super Bowl, you know he's going to jump into that category, and so there's Josh Allen who's just sitting there by himself.
Well, how does that hurt him? He doesn't get to the Pro Bowl. He hasn't been to the Pro Bowl yet.
Well, there's just someone over him.
Yeah.
Right? Because once you get that Super Bowl, you're a good quarterback. You're just automatically better than Josh Allen until he proves it. But he didn't, so.
I care more about the Bills winning than that.
Well, yeah. So I mean, both ways would hurt you, actually.
What about the Bills winning? All right, what about the halftime show? The halftime show, was it your favorite, your least favorite? Didn't even watch it?
I watched it. I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm old.
I mean, I saw all over Facebook, the millennials just being like, that was all those songs I knew and everything.
Did it work for them?
I don't know. I've never seen a halftime show really that I've been like, wow.
I'll tell you, this halftime show I loved was U2 after 9/11. That was a long time ago, but that was they had. Like the banners behind and the stars and stripes, but then the names of victims. It was and the towers fell, but it was an emotional time.
Yeah.
And you too. They're not even Americans, but just incredible tribute.
Yeah, Daniel and I were still drinking out of a bottle, I think, when that happened. No, I'm just kidding. I was probably in high school.
Here's the hot take on the. I saw this on a meme like last night, and I thought it was hilarious. The irony that 50 Cent performed between two quarters. So two sets of quarters,
two halves.
Really
stretching it there.
It was good. So
I think we're done.
All right, we're done. All right, Drew, back to you.
All right,
Sermon in 60. What was it about?
It was about how we talked about the habit of serving, obviously, and then we talked about the body, right? Our physical body and the body of Christ, and how those two compare so well because our physical body is made of so many parts, and each part has a specific role to play and affects another part of the body. And just like us, when we don't play our role, when we don't use our gifts, when we don't contribute, we hurt the body as a whole. And so the whole push was to play your part, right? You have a part in the body, you have a spiritual gift, you have passions, and so use those for the glory of God and the betterment of the body of Christ.
That's good. So who is the spiritual appendix? Because we haven't figured out what that... What role at Northridge
asking who's the spiritually useless part of the body?
We don't have one, right?
There is no appendix.
There's no appendix. You should have brought that out, but no. So first question is the tension between the past 2 weeks. It got brought up in community group. I even heard it a little bit on Sunday. People, joking about rest, and then we followed up with serving. Like we just told people, to rest. Now we're telling them to do more. Is there a tension that exists there, or how do we resolve that or live in that tension? Anybody can jump in.
I think I think there's a different way to serve and do work with sort of like I don't know, eye of the hurricane, peace in the storm. That there can be a rest that is enjoyed even when serving. A rest from performance, a rest from evaluation, a rest from stress, but to serve in a way that doesn't take energy out of you, but gives you energy.
Yeah.
Peaceful, unhurried, in the zone, flow. I mean, I think there's ways to, again, I was talking before the podcast about just, there's always a danger when we talk about serving of being guilt-based, and I've heard sermons that make it sound like the church will fall down if people don't sign up immediately, we're not going to make budget or whatever, or these kids, are in physical danger. I don't know. But
None of our kids are in physical danger, by the way.
No, we're good.
None of our
good. We're
campuses.
totally good. But there can be kind of a desperation, and people. I hate to see people trapped in roles, right? I love it here, and I've seen in previous churches that people are free to change roles, right? Don't get trapped, in a role. But if I don't do this, it's not going to get. No, if this.
The joke that I've said in several different contexts about serving, a lot of times we think of serving at the church as you're locked in this role until you die or Jesus comes back, and so it's like, but we don't want that to be the case, we try to in a lot of the areas that I help. Shepherd and volunteers, we try to do a annual re-up. And so it's like almost every year you get an opportunity like, hey, you on the bus for another year? Obviously, because there is some benefit in like, I'm going to ride this out for a season because you don't want to be flaky in your role. Like you don't want to just hop around from like, I'm a greeter one week. I'm like, I don't want to do that anymore. Let me go to the cafe and then kidsmen and then like somewhere else. But, you can lock in like, I'm going to test this out for this year or whatever the case would be. I don't know if every ministry area at Northridge does like that, but I know like kidsmen, youth, we kind of say like, okay, every year we're going to re-ante up. Like, are you in for another year kind of thing?
Right.
And so,
and I think when it comes to this question, it's not, you don't pick one or the other. It's both.
Yeah.
That's why this series is all about habits, right? You need both habits in your life. So you should be contributing somewhere and also finding space in your life for the rhythm of rest. And so rest, it doesn't have to be like a weekly thing. It's a rhythm in your life. So there are seasons in my life where, man, we serve and we contribute and it's exhausting, but over the hill, we're like, okay, we're going to take a break and we're going to rest. There's rhythms, right? And so you don't choose between these two. You have to have both of them in your life. And, I think part of the problem why it's hard to rest is because what Scripture says, when people choose not to contribute, other people have to contribute more. If we would all do our part, it would naturally build in rhythms of rest because there's backups for the backups, right? So when you're off, someone else is on. You're resting, someone else is contributing. That's the way the body works, right? When something's hurt, something else steps up and compensates until that body part fixes and heals, right? That's the way the body of Christ is meant to be. If we all contribute, we all have the ability to rest. But when we all don't play our part, it makes it harder on certain people to do that.
Yeah, even nuancing it a little bit more is if you remember in the talk that I gave, most of the point wasn't about like you should take a nap.
Right.
It was like you need to delete some things out of your life that are either making you stressful, distracted, or some of those things. And most of those things I would point back to tension points of that the root cause probably is either social media or the amount of media intake we're doing. If the average person in America is spending 5.5 hours either on their phone or watching TV, and the chances are they're not watching
that's the worst rest possible.
That's the worst kind of rest possible, and we need to delete some of that out of our lives so that we can add some of these other habits. And then even further so, I would probably say that most Americans' Sabbaths, the easiest way to do that is probably like Saturday night at 6 through Sunday night at 6. But in that hour, we're not so legalistic. Jesus even says, is it unlawful to help someone on the Sabbath?
Right.
And he's like, no, you missed the point.
Unlawful to do kids ministry.
Is it, he's like, and to the Pharisees, I was in a conversation of like, did Jesus break the law on the Sabbath? Well, I don't think so. I don't think we see the point of where Jesus ever breaks the law. He is reattuning them to the heart of the law in the first place. Like he's not breaking law on the Sabbath by plucking grain heads or doing any of these things. But he's going to church. He's serving other people on the way. And that can be, if you have the right attitude and mindset, not one of I'm serving out of guilt, like you said, Brad.
Right.
But I'm serving out of a contributing and just so excited I get the opportunity to do this.
Well, it's gratitude.
Yeah, it's an attitude of gratitude.
It's grace, right? It's just enjoying and paying forward grace. It's the gospel, which frees us, from guilt. And again, it's such a different dynamic of a workplace that you probably go to where there's these performance appraisals and you may or may not keep your job, and there's a tension and an anxiety about it. To me, I love serving in the body of Christ. It's just, this is family, right? I didn't earn my way in here. Christ paid his way and made me part of it, and we get to serve one another, and it's out of gratitude.
Yeah. And it's one of those places where you can find rest, right? It's interesting, right? Just because you're doing something doesn't mean you can't find rest.
Right.
Because the point last Sunday was
purpose
not
of rest,
take a nap. That was not the point last Sunday.
The whole point of rest is find purpose and lean dependence, right?
Yeah.
Those two things, right? So, sometimes your rest, again, is not the nap. It's finding where you find purpose, right?
Yeah.
And purpose gives you energy. It gives you fulfillment. It rests your mind and your soul.
Absolutely.
And dependence, like there's no better place to find rest than be like, it's not about me, it's God, right? So again, it's these two things don't clash with each other. They actually work hand in hand together.
Absolutely. That's good. So let's talk about other things that work hand in hand in us, like thinking about serving. What role, we didn't talk a ton about it on Sunday, but I think this is one of the passages that people commonly go to talking about spiritual gifts and the church. What role do our spiritual gifts play in our serving role at a church, in general? What do they play at hand together? Do they have no relationship or spiritual gifts? And some people may be thinking what is even a spiritual gift in that? But what role do those play together?
I mean, I have questions myself, which some of them I'm not sure they need to be answered, but things I wrestle with because a lot of our language, when we talk about spiritual gifts, it sounds a lot like talents. It sounds a lot like, well, in the secular world, people do Strengths Finder or different, aptitude measures or different things, and it's just are we just baptizing those concepts and just saying, those are from the Spirit, or is there something supernatural about what comes on? I think the Bible's pretty clear that it is supernatural, but it may look a lot like gifts to to teach or administrate or comfort or encourage, these things that we can't see in the secular world, but in some ways they're different through the power of the Holy Spirit. So
well, and I think God, gives us these gifts through the Spirit of God. So they often align with our passions, right? He wired us, he made us that way. So usually where our passions lead us, God has somewhat gifted us in those areas. And, the role, I think they play a significant role. And I think sometimes you just have talents and passions that you should serve in. So I would bet probably, and this is a guess, but 50% of the church probably doesn't even know what their spiritual gifts are. And there's no perfect way. Hey, here's the exact way to find your spiritual gift. Sometimes it comes through trial and error. Sometimes it comes through wow, how did I do that? Wow, Spirit of God just moved through you. Sometimes, I believe, Brad, you said this earlier, sometimes God gives you a gift for a season, and then he gives you a different one for a season. And so I think you develop your gifts by contributing, right? God shows you your gifts. I didn't know I had the gift of teaching until I taught, right? And so sometimes it's just a matter of following God's leading in your life and him developing a gift and showing you that gift through experience.
I think that's really key. I think modern mindset is, please just give me the test and I can fill out the questions and know.
right.
But it's like, it's a lot messier than that. We're going to just throw you off the deep end and see what works in some ways. But I've always thought of the combination of like passions, like you say.
Yeah.
The counsel of others, right?
Yeah,
You
that's
just
what
need
I was going to
feedback.
throw that in there. We usually don't give like step-by-step formula points, on the podcast, but if you're thinking like, how do I figure out like my gifting, I think Drew, we've kind of all brought some of these things to light, is your passions and then experience, like getting in the game, because a lot of the times you don't even know you may have a passion. Sometimes I may even replace those orders, because I've talked to countless people through the years that they're like, I don't know, and like somebody else saw something in them, like you would be an amazing, 7th grade boys small group leader. I know like you don't think it and you think like they're just stinky and whatever the case may be, but I promise like you're going to crush it. And somebody else saw something in you and there's a need. So you jump in and then all of a sudden you're like, holy cow, I love this and I'm really good at it. And but the fear of it is just like, I don't know.
Right.
Like,
That story's told over and over again.
Yeah, over and over again.
With our group leaders, right?
Yeah.
There's so many people, first off, they have the wrong idea what it means to lead a group. They think it means being, a mini Drew or something. And, but no, it's, you've got these, great passion, gifts in teaching, and other people think, well, do I need to teach? But no, it's really that pastoral shepherding gift. But there's people who need to be. They would never choose it for themselves. They need others to coax
And we
them
watch
into
too many
the role.
Marvel movies. These are not superpowers that you get one and you have to use it forever, right? We look at all these guys, all the X-Men and all the Marvel characters, they have this gift and they use that gift. You have probably more than one spiritual gift, right? So in some circumstances, you're serving in a role where you use one of your gifts and maybe not all your gifts. And so it's not, we're not superheroes here with magical powers. It's provided by the Spirit of God.
Yeah.
Even though I love Marvel.
Yeah,
I love Marvel.
So in that process of our passions, and I don't even know if you put them in order, but our passions, community, and then experience of like getting in the game. I think those three things play a key role in us figuring out like, what are we good at? Where should we serve? And how can we use the church? And even just to add this nuance, we may all, if you're a follower of Christ, you have the Spirit of God within you, may have gifts, but His evidence of or showing up in working is kind of, in my opinion, and at least by experience, is directly related to how much I am depending on Him. If you have the gift of teaching, any good like communicator, preacher, teacher will tell you there's times where you just throw up a goose egg.
Oh yeah,
and most of the time, that time is when you're just depending on your talent and not the Holy Spirit's work and power, in your life. Of like, I know how to do this. Like, let me get up there and figure it out. And you're like, oh, shoot. Yeah. And then there's other times where it was like, I feel so unprepared for this talk. I didn't have enough time. But then, like, you just pray a lot more than normal. And then the Spirit of God works. And it's like, wow, maybe I should just, depend on
best
it.
advice I've ever gotten preaching wasn't in a seminary class. It was from a friend. He just said, hey, Drew, don't ever get so memorize that there's no room for the Spirit to move your heart somewhere else, right? And it again, this is God working through you, and if you don't leave any space for God, not that He needs space, but He desires for us to create space that He moves, and I think our gifts are like that. It's a gift that the Spirit uses through you. It's not, that's the difference, right? Talents are something that's all our power, all our, our, what we have. But a spiritual gift is something that the Spirit of God illuminates in you. I don't know if illuminates the good word, but that's what I went
It takes
with.
faith to have that posture,
you
know, and just to really rest in God's work in you. That's
because I think all of this
I'm preaching to myself.
Yeah,
here.
this talk in this regard is like, it's all about a posture. It's a starting place, and I love that we're talking about a posture of just humility and desiring to be a contributor to the church and not just a consumer. Because that helps us. If you don't start there, then you'll get in the game for the ultimate wrong reasons. And you gave a great, sports analogy. And I know most of the time we try to avoid sports analogies because they hit just a small section of population. But, like thinking about your sports analogy, any basketball player who jumps in the game and their only goal is, I want to score. Yep. Not we want to score, but like I want to score. That person doesn't stay in the game very long because either coach pulls them out or the team just stops passing to him.
Team doesn't like him.
Yeah, it's like nobody wants the ball hog. Like nobody wants that guy, on the floor with them, and so it keeps them in that regard.
I think another topic on gifts too is, that was the problem in Corinth, right? Is they labeled certain gifts better than others. And I think one of the big problems when it comes to spiritual gifts, just in general with humanity, is maybe, I don't know if jealousy is the right word, but I want the gift that has the most accolades,
glam.
right?
Yeah.
The glamour. I want the gift that takes me on the stage, right?
And Paul talks about that, the honorable versus the dishonorable gifts. Yeah, the ones that are in that regard. But God, as he says, elevates what some call the dishonorable gifts or the less glamorous.
And just being okay with the role God has given you, right? That is the best role you can take, and not wanting somebody else's role or desiring after someone else's gifts.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's ask this question. Should I only be serving at church in my spiritual gift? So if I have the gift of hospitality or teaching or whatever the case may be, administration, should I only say I can only serve in a role that allows me to exercise said gift on a Sunday morning?
And there's a balance between a good fit and that kind of rigid legalism, and also the arrogance to even know. Are you really? I mean, you've got the Holy Spirit scoreboard up there and knows what gifts you've been assigned and how much. It's like
they must have the appendix.
I don't know. They're discovered in the doing, really.
Yeah,
sure.
So
I would, yes and no, right? I think certain people
want a good fit.
I would say, hey, at this point, I've got the gift of teaching. That doesn't mean I have to teach for the rest of my life, right? At some point, I think God is, there's seasons, right? Where, hey, I have a season for you, and until I take you out of that season, use that gift. So I think people, if they know their gifts, should try to use them in some capacity. It doesn't have to be like, oh, I can only serve in this area. Right. No, you might find you have other gifts by going into a different area. So it's not this legalistic, you got one path to go in and you better go there or God's going to be disappointed.
It's almost impossible then to avoid the pride of, I'm not doing that.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
That is beneath me. But I would say a lot
Are you on the team?
Yeah.
Exactly.
I would say a lot of times in the church world though, those gifts in certain people are elevated in the sense of of teaching, right? Well, I'm not. I can't I can't work in the cafe because I got to teach. I got to exercise the gift of teaching. I can't hold the door. I can't be an usher because, well, do you have anything where I can be a teacher? There's those people who have that drum and they beat it until they find that role.
I think you ought to remember Jesus' parable about sitting, not at the head of the table, but at the foot of the table. It's far better to work faithfully in your corner and be invited into that role than to push your way arrogantly into it.
Yeah, first shall we last, right?
Yeah.
The way we measure is backwards from a heavenly perspective. So I think it's good to use your gifts. If you recognize you have gifts, definitely use them. If you got a gift of hospitality, use it, right? Be hospitable, right? But don't force it where all I can do is invite people over to my house and make them food. Come on, God.
Yeah.
They can send us into the podcast and
that's right.
Let us know your address. So. But yeah, I think what we're saying here is the big point in all this is locating a need and being willing and humble and saying hey, I'm willing to go wherever you may have me. But if you know where your passion is, for example, if you're hey, I really enjoy being hospitable. We have a great first impressions team where it's ushers and greeters and people in the parking lot, the cafe, all those are kind of tied in. But if you're hey, I really enjoy the next generation on Sunday mornings, it's, they can serve in kidsmen in a plethora of different roles or tech, of cameras and worship team. There's so many different opportunities and there's so many needs out there that I think the point is once you have that mindset of, hey, I want to just jump in the game. I'm willing to serve. I'm grateful to do it. And then it's finding where you start out.
Yeah, I'm sure all three of us have had experiences where, we just don't know in advance how God is going to use us. And I think we've all had experiences where we've been part of something where we just got to see God work through us in a way that it didn't bring us pride. It brought us tears, right? I mean, I remember years ago being part of, in investigative Bible study and just, going back to my desk in tears, just that I got to watch the Holy Spirit work, and I got to, be there for that. Eric Little in Chariots of Fire says, when I run, I feel his pleasure in me. Yeah. It's just, we don't necessarily know where or how that's going to be. Make yourself available. If someone asks you to do something, give it a try. It does. If it works, great. If it doesn't, you've learned. But God will surprise you in how He uses you.
Yeah, I think John and Diane's story is a perfect example of that. We didn't, this is how the Spirit works. We didn't plan that on serving, Sunday or contributing Sunday or that. God just aligned all that up to tie it all together. And, it is amazing when you're like, man, I got to play a small part in that. And when you look at a guy like John, who's strong Italian, manly man in that tank, crying his eyes out because of what God has done in his life, and to be like, wow, I played a tiny role in that.
Right.
It's like you said, it brings you to tears. It's not like, wow, my gifts are so good. Look what I accomplished.
We get to be a part.
Yeah. Thank you, Lord.
Yeah, we've talked about a lot in the regard of just the church as a whole when we gather on a Sunday morning. But there's one other atmosphere that I want to talk about using our gifts or just serving in general that we could do it in a more personalized level. And that's because Jason, he paid me on the table, but in community groups. So of everyone being a contributor in community groups and not having that mindset of like, oh, well, those are our group leaders and, they lead discussion, they bring snack, they host, they do everything. Like what are all the different roles? Brad, you're really passionate about this, so this would be an easy softball question for you of serving in our community groups, of those 10 people that we are doing life with. Why is it important to have that mindset going into that area? Like, I'm going to be a contributor to community group.
Well, you're stunting everyone's growth if you just, don't let people assume those roles. But there are so many good things happen when people share those roles, in groups. And so we've been in the habit for a few years. I forget who first came up with the idea of, because we used to pass around sign-up sheets, let people volunteer. And then since then, most group leaders just make a calendar and just assign people roles, right? It's like, oh, you're leading discussion, this week, or you're bringing snack, or we're going to be at your house. And then you let people
That's the way Jesus did it, too. He's like, Zacchaeus, I'm coming to your house tonight. You better have something ready.
But then people can react to that, and if they want to push back or trade with someone else or whatever else, but it gets the ball rolling, and it will push them and edge them into things where then they get the joy of serving and growing. And it also gives them buy-in, right? We've talked about this is a body that's knitted together. You feel that when you serve.
That's right.
You feel that when others depend on you.
Yeah.
It's your group when it's coming to your house.
Yeah.
And it's just like you're not going to say, I don't think so this week. No, they're coming, right? So
I don't think we can make it this week, guys.
Well, and if you enjoy your group, at some point, if you don't do anything, you're going to lose your group because your leaders are going to be burnt out and tired and
it's
exhausted.
Unsustainable.
Yeah.
And people don't want my choice for snack every week.
What would your choice for snack?
What is
be?
your choice?
Whatever bags of Fritos. Or
Oh, okay. I thought you had like something really good that you were going to share.
No. I'm not. I am always blessed by what other people bring. It's not, and when it's our responsibility, I'm sorry, Karen is far more gifted than I am, but you don't want me on snack.
Yeah. The last
not
question,
my spiritual gift.
Not your spiritual gift. That's good. Last question I want to talk about just for a brief second is you talked about this idea of being a fan of Jesus versus a follower of Jesus. How can that mindset, as we wrap this whole conversation up about serving, why was that distinction made, and how can we know if we're landing in that fan category of Jesus and not the follower category?
Well, if you want to really study this, just read the Gospels. And every time the crowd got big with Jesus, you'll notice he said something radical, right? Like, hey, deny your cross, pick it up, follow me. And guess what he did? He easily just pushed the fans away. And so I think a good gauge, if you're a fan of Jesus, is if when he asks you to do something hard, whether you run or stay, It's amazing to me, the church today, we want, and I think the church is changing. COVID, I think, has actually made the church a little bit healthier, where we're no longer just measuring how many people come, right? That used to be the metric, like, yeah, our church is this big. Ooh, my church is this big. That doesn't matter anymore because COVID eliminated that. Mm-hmm. And what happens now is we're engaging a lot of things like next steps, attendance, giving, all these things to say, man, I'm bought in and this is hard, but I want to follow Jesus. And so I think a great gauge is just read some of the Gospels and look at what some of the things Jesus calls his disciples to. He says a couple times, if you want to be my disciple, AKA, if you want to follow me, do this. And if you're like, I'll do that, you're probably a follower. If you're like, you might be on the fence still.
One of his least popular sermons, eat my flesh, drink my blood. They just left him
like, wait, what?
Read a commentary when you read that one.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah,
sure.
Thanks for listening. I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
So on that topic, what do you find hardest to teach, or do you find people hard, it's hard to receive? I mean, there's waves. Have you seen certain teaching where it's been hard for people? We've lost people over it. Is that?
Oh yeah. I mean, anytime you even touch anything that would be in the realm of biblical and political, people just dig their heels in, and they, you stretch them on things like racism or things like how we treat people.
Right.
There's so many nuances there that people, you step on a landmine and people don't give you the grace that you hope they give you. They just seem to walk away. And again, this is a very, they're all very controversial, but there are topics that, I feel like people just don't go there.
Yeah. Did I go off topic with that? But that's just, we're talking about a faithfulness in serving.
Yeah. No, I don't think so. I think in the regard of, I think a lot of times when it comes to teaching, the hard part is convincing people the difference in believing it or doing it.
Yeah.
There's a book that we've referenced, like Do You Believe? And it's really convicting. It's by Paul Tripp, in the sense of like just talking about all these biblical principles, like of, okay, if you really believe this, but you're not living it out, like what are you?
You don't actually believe it.
You don't actually believe it. And I think that, thinking about our church, and there's a lot of people who love Northridge but aren't, taking next steps, or they're really not engaged. And so if you're saying what you love about Northridge is just that 1 hour you come on Sunday morning because the worship team's amazing, the tech crew's amazing, the kids men team's amazing, the teaching's amazing. It's like, I love getting to come and watch for an hour. It's like, well, you're not in the game. And if you believe, then you'll do what Jesus said. And he talked about how we're all necessary for each other. He talked about how we should be serving and fulfilling needs and those kind of things inside the local church context and as we're out and about in our lives. And so,
yeah, with all of these, we're offering something more. I mean, there's really something wonderful in stepping forward in this. It may not seem like it, giving your money away, giving your time away, you're making sacrifices. It's counterintuitive, but that is the paradox of the gospel, that we die. Those who, want to keep their lives will lose it, but those who give it away.
And with a heavenly perspective, you want to get to heaven and be like, wow, look. I mean, that will be an amazing thing. Look how God used the gifts He's given me to impact lives that I didn't even know were listening. I didn't even know I had influence over, right? That will be a beautiful thing in heaven.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for listening this week on A Little Better, where we talked all about serving. We wrap up this series next week with one more habit that has the potential to change your life. We'll see you then.